Just to go over the kind of the agenda for the call today. Yeah, once we kind of talk through the problems that we're currently working on, then Afo and I will give a brief intro on the public good funding round that we're operating and that we're distributing funding through here. And then we'll highlight the mechanisms really quickly, and then we'll have presentations from the different projects that we've identified as priority tooling and infrastructure. Those are basically the platforms and protocols that the public goods meta is already depending on or is already connected with really strongly. And the idea there is to kind of use that as a starting point for prioritizing the problems that we're focusing on improving in the space. Both to integrate into our other solutions and to just make more interoperable with each other. But yeah, we'll have presentations, and then we'll open up time for builders to chat and talk about proposals that you're working on or problems that you're trying to solve. We have a healthy number of drafts of proposals up already in Charmverse, and I think there's a good amount more still being drafted. There's still lots of time, so hopefully this call will help everyone collaborate and kind of find the pieces of proposals that we can improve and merge together and just generally make better before we put them into gardens, which is when they'll be finalized for funding. And then we'll close with a fun thing, what's exciting everyone here the most? What kind of like blue sky, if anything is possible, do we want to have happen in this space? And yeah, that should be it. Thanks everyone for joining. And Afo, do you want to kick us off on the icebreaker?
Yeah, so we got a lot of good responses. So anyone that just came in using DeFi yield to create more sustainable funding flows and then connect that to multiple. I wonder who that is. But yeah, there's a lot of great ones, and this is so we're going to come back to this later in the call when we're talking about ideas and kind of collaborating and potentially crafting proposals together. So yeah, really great stuff. And if you join later, the slider will be in the call, or yeah, feel free to answer at any time. But yeah, Paul, should we give a quick overview of the round, handing it over to the tools?
Yeah. You probably have at least some context if you're here, but to get everyone up to speed, this is the public goods tooling development round. We are a subdomain of public goods, which is a funded Gitcoin GG24 round. And our whole purpose is to invest in the public goods meta. And so what does that mean? We have public goods. We have public goods all over the world, but in Web3, we have public goods connected specifically to our networks and how we can get Ethereum to run smoothly. The public goods meta is the infrastructure that supports public goods. And so we define this as capital formation, capital allocation, governance and coordination of decisions, reputation and identity, and impact measurement. And so these are the tools that ecosystem growth organizations and Web3 communities are depending on to be able to fund their shared wealth. Basically, whatever their mission is, whatever it is that you're working on. If you're growing a network, if you're growing an L2, if you're growing a community of orange farmers in Georgia, that's your purpose. And you need to fund shared infrastructure for your community or ecosystem to effectively build that. So that's why we're here. We have our own pain points in Ethereum and our own problems funding public goods, and so the problem starts with our own pains and our own things that aren't working for us. And so our hope is that we can collectively identify these needs and these pain points and allocate this funding to be as effective as possible at making our lives as public goods funders and as ecosystem growth orgs and as just general Web3 communities better. So yeah, that's kind of the high level. And Afo, I can let you dive into the kind of mechanics of the round. Want to go for that?
Yeah, let's go. So we got 2 pathways for builders to take if you want to participate in the round. So just going down a bit, we have the pilot and the growth pool. So yeah, like Paul said, we're looking to support tools that are building around a few areas of meta, such as capital formation, capital allocation, governance and coordination, identity and reputation, and impact measurement. And within that, if you have something that's like a new idea or something that you're just starting to incubate, the pilot pool is a good path. And if it's something that you've already built or it's heavily integrating 2 things, the growth pool could be your fit. So in essence, what you do currently is you go to Charmverse, so you follow the link here, and let's see, I'll just click it. And what that's gonna do, that's gonna take you to a Charmverse application. If you haven't signed into the Charmverse or you haven't logged in, it'll have you log in first, and then you should be able to access this link. And it's just some questions first around your problem that you're solving, learning more about the team. So who's going to help build this project, not just from the engineering side, but from the project management, design side, etc. A link to your KarmaGAP so that we could have that track your activity reports that we're going to be doing as a way to track impact and progress throughout the round. And then we also have collaborations where you could basically share who you plan to partner with or who you already are partnering with. And then we have deliverables and your budget. And then lastly, a go-to-market plan. So with this helps to give us a lot of context as to a few of the core areas, such as interoperability, collaboration, growth and maturity, UI and UX, and then other questions as to how do you plan to grow this after successfully completing said deliverable. So yeah, that's the process right now. And then from there, we'll go into Gardens, which our funding pools will be created later today. But here you'll come here and maybe I could show an example with the previous pool. So let's see. So in essence, you'd come to Gardens, and here is, for example, the Allo Capital Builders Fund. You'll come to a garden pool and then create a proposal. So let me create my wallet. Okay, looks like I got to Ravi, got logged in with Ravi, so it's not Garden's fault.
And just to give context on this flow, so when you draft a Charmverse, you are not posting in any way a finalized proposal. That's very much a draft. When it's in Charmverse, it's open for public comment. Anyone can look at other proposals and comment on them, and the proposal creators are able to edit those proposals. They're able to talk with other people who are commenting and giving feedback, and that's kind of the collaborative phase of this, which will really be for the next week and a half or so, where we try to fine tune these proposals and try to break out of the silos of a lot of different proposals that might be solving really similar problems. And so when the proposal goes to Gardens, that is you saying that it's ready, it's final. You can no longer edit the deliverables or the terms or any of the components of the proposal. That is the ultimate proposal that is going to either get funded or not. So that's kind of how to think through when to move it from Charmverse into Gardens. And the final deadline for the Garden submission to be eligible for retro funding, which I think Afo is going to get to next, that's October 31st. Then Afo, yeah, I don't think we've gotten to the retro element of the round yet.
Yep. So in order to qualify for retro, your proposal must be made by the 31st, which means there's a high chance that you're not going to get funding via one of the pools, but you can still get retro rewards by following the impact reporting framework we set up and completing deliverables that you said in the proposal on Charmverse. And you still can, I guess maybe you can't submit on Gardens because by that time there won't be funds in the pool, but as long as you submit on Charmverse, that you're good for retro. And then if you do receive funding, you must complete your impact reporting and milestones to qualify for retro. So in essence, it's being rewarded for completing said deliverables. So we ask not to do too much. Try to, it's only going to be around 6 to 8 weeks to build. So just try to do something that's very clear. It could be just one deliverable. It doesn't have to be multiple. Less is more. And then lastly, let's see, yeah, we'll have a closing ceremony sometime in December. Right now it's set for December, I think. Not sure we even set a date yet. Let's go to the top. December 12th is our retro reward ceremony, and there we'll be basically giving out the rewards for projects that completed milestones and projects that did get funding but also continue to deliver and reported on their impact. So yeah, I think that's a good summary of the round. And maybe any questions before we get into the tools and the showcase?
You'll notice that a good portion of the funding is retro. That came from iterations of similar rounds that Afo and I have run previously. We used to just link it to milestones. So the funding was for milestone-based work, and when you completed the work, you got the funding. And we realized that this was missing an element where you might have done the work, but there's the success of how well that work wound up solving the problems that you were trying to solve. And so by moving a lot of funding towards the retro rewards, we're able to have like a much more kind of detailed view of what it means for a proposal to be successful. And yeah, how much is it solving whatever pain points, or how much is it growing the tool that you're building, or yeah, did it increase adoption of the platform that you're working on? So yeah, it allows us to really make sure that that the best investments are getting rewarded the most.
Mm-hmm. I see Festival here with the question around: do we need to build new tools by ourselves, or the new way to use existing tools for funding allocation can be eligible running around? It depends. It really depends. I'd say it could be either, depending on the proposal. I would say though, I feel like a lot of ideas I've been seeing are ideas that people have already built something around. So I think a lot of it is around building on existing tools, like if where possible. But of course, if it is something new, if it's something that might not have been touched upon, or building on something that's recently been developed, then I could definitely see a new tool being utilized as well. Cool. Any other questions? And we'll have some more space later, but just for anybody that might have to hop off at the hour, just want to have some space for you guys. Cool. All right, I think we're good. Let's see what I could call up first for the showcase. I think, yeah, Paul, you're good to go. Anything else you want to mention before we hop into this?
I'm just realizing that we didn't do much to introduce ourselves, Afo. We might it might help for people.
I do that. I'm notorious for doing that. So I was like, I know everybody here, so they know me, so I don't need to say anything. Yeah, let's do that. So yeah, I'm Afo Lobby, full name. I'm a steward of the Greenpill network and Dev Guild, part of the Gardens core team, as well as a part of Region Coordination and now Region Commons. And yeah, so I've been building in the space for the past few years. Before getting into the space, I was working as a software engineer for about five years. And then when I got into the space, I started working on a project called WAFA. And then from that, got into Greenpill. And then from that point, I've been working on Greenpill since. And it's cool to see Bryce here, because Bryce knows I've talked to Bryce since the WAFA days. So it's been a long time. And yeah, so I'm happy to have everybody here on this call, and a lot of familiar faces and people I've been working with for the past few years. So it's great to have this opportunity to help grow the tooling and help mature this space. Yeah, pass it to you, Paul.
Nice. Yeah, I'm Paul. I am project lead for the Gardens platform. I've been in this space since 2021. I have worked that entire time on public goods infrastructure, and especially capital allocation and decision mechanisms. Outside of Gardens, I'm very active in OneHive. OneHive, a lot of people might remember from 2020, 2021. It's still alive. There's still a handful of us that do fun stuff through OneHive. I've also spent a lot of time with Gitcoin. And yeah, I've worked a lot in the kind of connected organizations for public goods funding, through my work there. So yeah, I recognize some of you here, but I don't think I recognize nearly as much as AFO. So I'm excited to meet a lot of new builders and get to know some of you guys better. And yeah, before Web3, my Web2 background was all in growth and marketing. So my background is non-technical, and I was very excited to bring that into the world of Web3, which has felt like an entire new space of what it means to grow and market a product, because we don't have products, we have communities and missions. And yeah, it's been a fun learning process, and there's still a lot to learn. Yeah, I think if there aren't any more questions, we can probably dive into the showcase.
Yeah, let's do that. I think I'll call up, if Nick is here from HATS, first call him up to present.
Yeah, my name's Nick. I'm a builder in the space for a while now. I've been working on HATS protocol for 3 years. First got interested in DAOs in 2017. And HATS is really about creating specific roles and responsibilities within an organizational structure so that you can minimize the number of votes that need to happen in the DAO and maximize the effectiveness of the use of resources and the decision making to achieve the objectives of the organization. So I'll show you guys a little bit of how HATS work. I'm probably not going to be able to see the chat. So if anyone wants to interrupt, shoot. Okay, can you see that?
Yep.
Okay, I actually can see the chat. That's great. Cool. So yeah, so we built this just to talk a little bit about like the structure and its composability. You know, we outline it here on the ethos part of our website, but you know, it's fully open source. It's decentralized, so the V1 protocol contracts are all you know, immutable, unowned, not upgradable on Ethereum and all the other chains where it's deployed. You can go directly to the GitHub repo, grab it and deploy it on a new chain, but we probably already support the chains you want to integrate with. And it's designed to be composable. So we really focused on like how to make it interoperable with all different other accounts. So a lot of times you'll see like in a given structure, you'll see like a DAO contract that is wearing the top hat and that gives it admin responsibility over other hats. And then you have maybe another DAO contract, you know, several safes, right? Any existing Ethereum building blocks that you have for smart accounts can be used for controlling hats, and then by way of that, they become an admin of all these other parts of the structure. So let me show you a little bit of a simpler tree than our main tree that we use to explain how this works. The core concept is usually we have a top hat is controlled by a DAO. You have token holders. They can buy the token. They can vote in a governor DAO or something like that. We have an admin contract that helps to manage all of the permissions. If there's like eligibility requirements, or you have to stake in order to get certain hats that are lower children in the tree, then usually we handle that here. And then in Rare DAO's case and in Treasure DAO's case and in many other examples, we see this very simple structure, which is a council that sort of serves as an executive or sometimes a security council that can govern a set of responsibilities on behalf of the DAO, so the DAO doesn't have to vote on every single thing. That's sort of like the core motion that you see over and over again in hats, is like, how can we take a set of resources and a set of decisions and give it to a smaller group of people for the purposes of reducing costs and then sometimes getting better decisions, right? Because sometimes the wisdom of the crowd is not better than, you know, in this case, a council of 7 elected experts sort of making decisions and moving fast. In this case, this is a safe here, and then underneath the safe, they have a bunch of other you know, the grants team, the DAO ops team, the actual foundation roles like the foundation director, the supervisor. You know, you can allocate funds directly to that. So other people who will be presenting later on the call will talk about how to do the allocation of funds to the different safes and smart accounts that are involved in this structure. But this just lets you set up the actual admin permissions and access control. And if you don't already know, Hats are, they're transferable only by the admin, but they're non-transferable by the wearer. So these 7 people who have gotten, who've been elected to this role, they got the role token, the hat, by way of the election process via the full DAO, but they can't transfer that token to somebody else or sell it on OpenSea or something like that. They can only renounce it if they no longer want the responsibilities, or the DAO can sort of take it from them and give it to somebody else. This front end is a little bit, from a builder perspective, it's a little bit opinionated about what sort of belongs inside of a hat. If we go over to the actual, like, what the hat looks like on Etherscan, you can see what the hat details actually include. So we say view hat. We can grab the token ID right from this button here. And then that ID should register. This is what it actually looks like on chain. So the details here is an IPFS link. So all this text information, the various authorities and links that are included here, that's all consolidated into an IPFS file and JSON object and IPFS, and then hosted automatically. So you get decentralization off the bat if you use our app. But if you're building something from scratch, you can put any string that you want into this details field. Image works the same way. We automatically pin a JPEG to IPFS and then put that IPFS link on chain. But if you wanted to put something else in this field, you totally could. You just have to figure out the front end that you want to surface it with. The max supply, the total supply of the hat so far, so like 7 out of 7 have been minted. Eligibility and toggle are module smart contracts that can be plugged in to change the way that the hat is granted. So in this case, we ran an election process. You can see that this smart contract here is going to be, I think it's an allow list module in this case. It's a little more complicated. I can explain, if you are going to be building with eligibility modules, I can explain them to you in detail. And we also have like very robust docs that explain all of these components, but we're available on Telegram, happy to help answer questions. But the idea is that you can write a custom smart contract that defines the requirements for someone to get a given hat, and it'll automatically revoke it if they no longer meet those criteria. And someone can claim it if you make it claimable and they meet all of the criteria. So in this case, they had to win an election, and then they could claim the hat that showed, because on chain, there's the signifier that they've actually won the election already. And what that does is it creates a very small surface area for you to ship like net new smart contracts that are, 50 lines or 100 lines that are very simple and, low sort of like security auditing needs. But it also makes it very, very customizable. So if you want to look at ERC20 balances, or you want to look at, NFT balances, or you want to have someone stake in order to be eligible to get a hat, you can write those contracts very easily. And we already have 20 or 30 of them that have been used in production that you can implement pretty easily from the app. From a user perspective, what we offer is an edit mode. So you can do all these sort of configurations. You jump in here and you can change the text, automatically save it to IPFS. You can update the eligibility modules like we just talked about. That sort of gives you some options for what these are, and then the ability to configure them. And anytime you make changes and want to actually deploy, you press save, and you get this shopping cart that shows the changes. You can export so that you can share with other people, other team members, other people in your organization. You can import their changes, and then you also get transaction call data if you need to like import this into a save or like the tally front end or something like that. This will give you the code to actually execute these changes as the top hat, as opposed to just like whatever hat you're wearing in the tree. So yeah, that's the very high level. And again, yeah, I'll jump into questions now, because otherwise we could talk about this all day.
I love hats, so I can listen all day. Maybe I'll kick off with the first question, or more of a curious, and maybe it's still being developed around trust zones. I watched the podcast you guys did, and just curious if there's any updates there. What's the release?
Yeah, so trust zones is a philosophical approach on how to design the right roles when you balance the effectiveness of that role, the cost basis of creating and what's the resources that are being delegated to that role, and then the decentralization that role has, or the hardness that the agents in that role offer to the admin. So you can think of this council as a trust zone, and it's the fact that it has like responsibility for the other roles, it has a budget allocated to it. Those are assets that are inside the trust zone. So we sort of broke down like, okay, what are all the parameters that we have? What are the levers that we can change? And then what mechanisms support those things from first principles over the last 3 years. And next week, we're going to publish an article that explains all that. The benefit of having it really clear is that we can use all the mechanisms that are available to us. In a lot of cases, that's like a DAO contract, a safe, HATS protocol, HATS eligibility modules, and now AI agents of various kinds to optimize across those trilemma parameters and make the best possible organizations. So what we're launching next will be a way of using HATS, which I just showed you in the app and all of the core protocol stuff, plus the philosophy and a lot of automation in order to make really, really good organizations. And because HATS is the substrate that all works with, it's going to be fundamentally interoperable and composable. So if you build a tool that works with HATS protocol today, it's going to be able to be used by people who want to use the trust zones philosophy and agents down the line.
Yes.
I see a comment in the chat about learning Astro and someone who made an app using HATS. That's very cool. We have, I think we have like 9 or 10 different front ends, including the HATS app. We had Cabin back in the day, built a custom front end. Got Mezzanine building with HATS using it for permission management, Decent DAO, and several others that are, sort of like took the protocol and its assurances at the protocol level, and we're able to just take it and run with it because it solved a specific problem from them from a developer perspective. No, we pay the pinning for IPFS for you. It's pretty trivial for us, so we can cover that, no problem. If you abuse it, then we'll be upset.
I see Yonks has your hand raised. Go for it, Yonks.
Yeah, as you know, Nick, love hats, and was wondering if you have any great case studies of how organizations have elevated their onboarding experience and incorporated hats into that onboarding process.
Yeah, that's a great question. We have some case studies here that are listed onto our website. I think the Optimism Fractal example could be pretty interesting here because it was really focused on access management and claiming a hat with an agreement. So one of the eligibility modules that's available is signing an agreement on chain. See, the text is pinned to IPFS, but the signature is committed by the wallet. I'm not saying anything about legal enforceability or anything like that, but you can see all the signatures from people that are claiming that hat. And then once you have the hat, you got access to, I think, the Charmverse or whatever people were using in the respect the game that Optimism Fractal was running. And that was really like community focused. Whereas like the tree that I was showing you with Rare DAO is much more focused on like, operating the governance surface with the token holders and like a legal foundation and managing the treasury, which is not as community oriented as that case study. It also just shows you sort of the breadth of different things that people can do with hats, like the things that you can do with when you ask someone like, okay, what is a company for? It's like for a lot of different things. You might form different types of companies for different purposes, and like hats, DAOs, hats generally, like you can do any type of thing that you want. Manage funds, manage community, bring people together for a cause, bring people together for building software. The variety there is as big as the imagination.
Awesome. Thank you, Nick.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me. And if anyone is building and needs some help, feel free to message me on Telegram. I'm at Ninty Nick.
Yeah, Nick, I'm definitely gonna hit you up. I got a few more questions I want to jam on. So great stuff. Love it.
Awesome.
Cool. All right. Before we get to the next, because I know probably some people might have to drop at the hour, want to do the POAP. So let me go ahead and share that real quick. So POAP has this new function. They actually have a new thing called POAP Express. So if you're creating POAPs now, it's a lot quicker and a lot more permissionless, which, yeah, good on that. And next up, we have Bryce from EAS, going to share about the protocol that I think a lot of us have built upon in this space. And yeah, definitely a key primitive.
It's nice to see you all again. AFO, it's been a while.
Yeah.
Nick, we've obviously been in touch throughout the years as well. Great seeing you. It was cool. Also, Luis in the crowd reached out. He was actually one of the first builders during ETH Waterloo in 2023. This was kind of close when we first launched EAS on mainnet, and Luis was building some cool hackathon projects there. But it's cool just to see, the connected tissue throughout Ethereum, and just to see new builders, but most importantly, the old ones, and still seeing them building some cool stuff. So it's good to see everyone.
Nice. Yeah, good to see you.
I'm happy to hear that a majority of the crowd is relatively familiar with EAS. So there's a couple ways that we could take this presentation. I think it's always helpful to start with just like why EAS exists. You can understand how to use it. Especially as we think about like public goods infrastructure more broadly, and just like how you can apply EAS pretty much immediately in any of the tools that you're building at different degrees. So happy to do that, and then we can jump into some of the tools that we have, like explorers, and then definitely make sure we've got like 5 minutes or so for anyone just to jump up and ask questions about EAS, or to like present like what you're working on. And if you need any help or have ideas of like what types of attestations could be made, happy to do some kind of live brainstorming together to do that. So I'm Bryce. I'm one of the co-founders of EAS. My role is really to help builders every day implement EAS, think about how attestations can be useful. And our current focus right now is really around improving the developer experience. So anything that helps you go from this idea stage to actually making an attestation is what we're really focused on. So to do that, we're really trying to work on improving the docs. Right now, like we launch our docs, we're like, sweet, we've got docs. And then like everyone's like, hey, your docs are good. But they've kind of like creeped over time to be a little bit like squirrely. And so we're trying to like rethink about like the best path to help people within Ethereum, and also like engineers that are exploring like attestations more broadly understand what Ethereum is, and also like how to make attestations related to Ethereum. So we're trying to simplify our docs to be a bit more generalized and more simple for all types of builders. And then we're also exploring a concept around like a developer studio, which is really thinking about like better ways we can make the explorer experience. So if you have any opinions on like, hey, I wish this type of view, existed to help me manage my attestations, would love to hear that type of feedback. But EAS, really the purpose of it is we're really passionate about decentralization and like decentralized systems, and how we can, really fulfill the vision of Ethereum when it first launched, which was let's create land registries, voting systems, DAOs, right? All these like, decentralized organizations. Let's create, under collateralized lending protocols, prediction markets, all these things. And here we are 10 years later, and we really haven't been able to achieve all of them. We've made significant progress, but it made us really think like, if we haven't been able to like have like, decentralized voting like at scale, or land registries, what was missing? And it's an identity protocol. You need identity. If you have a land, like a land registry, you need a government to attest to say that the land is real, right? Or else like it's hard to confirm that this parcel of land is real. You need some sort of authority to say this land is real. And so we realized like, okay, we started looking around all the identity protocols, and there's so many of them, and it creates a lot of confusion as a dev to figure out like, all right, if I need to like confirm who made this type of statement, then I need to know like who that person is. And it was really complex. And so we realized like, well, maybe everyone's building a layer too high. Maybe this idea of identity is a bit too abstract. And so we thought, well, what actually is your identity? Like philosophically, when you're born, you didn't have an identity, and then you did. So like, what happened? And so you could say like, I'm going to pick on Paul here, but when Paul was born, right, his parents said like, hey, this is my son, Paul, right? They attested to your name. Then the doctor attested to your date of birth. Then the government attests to your passport. Then you go to school and the teacher attests to your grades. Then you start attesting to other things, like things that you like, brands that you support. And so all these little micro interactions in life are just people saying things about things. They're just attesting things. We just haven't had like an elegant way to do that online and digitally. And so we realized if you want to solve like really complex things and abstract things like identity, you can't just create an identity protocol. You have to first start with a very simple primitive and Lego block for making an attestation, right? And then letting people derive like if that attestation is relevant or important to them. And so EAS is a very simple protocol for just structuring and signing data, which is making an attestation. So it's one entity saying that this data is valid. It doesn't confirm that the data is like true, right? That's up for interpretation. It just confirms that the data is valid and was signed at this time. And you can make attestations on-chain or off-chain. So I'm going to jump into a screen share just so you can kind of see it. But as I do that, feel free to interrupt me at any point as we're going through some of this stuff. I'm just on base. For EAS, we created kind of like the Etherscan for attestations. I'm on base, but we're across like, I think around 12 to 13 different chains right now. Most adoption is really focused around the superchain ecosystem. That's where we've seen the most like builder interest. There's been experiments like on Polygon and Arbitrum and stuff, and some pretty cool ones, but really it seems like the core focus has been around the superchain. And the Explorer just allows you to inspect like what type of schemas exist and then what types of attestations have been made with those schemas. And so if I click on the schema list, you can see attestations kind of coming in pretty regularly. If we look at the schemas, the biggest user right now is Coinbase on base, believe it or not. But they've been attesting to verified accounts and verified countries and verified Coinbase One users. And they do this so users can actually get an attestation signed by Coinbase that their account or this wallet address has been verified. If that attestation exists, protocols like Morpho and others have built like, perks and benefits and even like, access rights into specific pools. The benefit is that this is all very programmatic. Attestations are very structured and they're very easy to be read by smart contracts and verified by smart contracts. So this attestation, I'm just going to kind of like dive into it. Every attestation gets its own unique identifier, this hash up here. You get an on-chain timestamp if it's made on-chain, but attestations can also be made off-chain, so you can store them in a database in IPFS wherever you want locally. You can define an expiration date, and you can also kind of validate the life cycle of the attestation by its revocation status. So is it revoked? No. Could it be revoked? Yes. We can see that this attestation is using a schema called verified account. EAS doesn't control what types of schemas people create and like the best ways to create schemas. We just allow you to register the type of data, and then you can make attestations referencing that schema. So this is verifications.coinbase.eth attesting to this wallet address that they're a verified account true. And so if we click on the schema, you can see that the schema itself is very simple. It's just a bool verified account. So they're just attesting true or false to an address. And the unique part about the schema is that you can actually register a resolver contract that wraps around the schema itself, and it acts like a hook. So when an attestation is being made, you can actually control who is eligible to make attestations. You can also do things after the fact as well. So let's say you make an attestation for contribution, right? Like if you're creating some impact schema, let's say you attest this person contributed right at the point of the attestation for contribution, you could emit a payment or, drop them like an NFT or something. So you can do like actions before or after and really control like the kind of the brain of what the schema is able to do. And yeah, so you simply just register a schema and then you make attestations with it. Schema registration, super simple. First thing I always do is just see if there's a schema that already exists, because if there is a resolver, you don't really want to like use resolver contracts that you don't know like who built them, because you don't know, you have to verify like what type of logic that resolver does. But there's a lot of just very generic like schemas, and if there isn't a resolver, then you can just use them. So I was actually looking before during the call just to see if there was a schema for like contribution, just being able to attest to someone as like a contribution or a contributor. And there's some in here, and I could go in to see like, okay, there's like a vault ID, a contributor amount, timestamp. There's all these like ones, but I just want something simple. I just want to say that someone's a contributor, true or false. So what I would do is you can use the Explorer to register schemas kind of in a no-code way and just say contributor. And then for the schema, the type field, I would want to probably just use bool. And you can make this like way more robust, add like new fields, right? Like contributor type, you know, eligibilities. You can, you know, create subscriptions for like people that have an attestation, whatever kind of control you want. There's no resolver address. I don't have a contract I want to wrap around this. And then, so I'm going to create this. So I'm going to use my phone here for this one. Let's see if it pops up. So I just signed it, and we are registering a schema on base. And so it just went through, and we can see that the new schema has been created. And then what we also provide is just like a very simple code sample, so you can see how to make an attestation with that schema that you just made. So pretty straightforward to make it kind of like plug and play. But let's make an attestation for this. So ideally, you want to compose attestations together, and I'll show you kind of how that can happen. But for a recipient, we can add, who's got a simple ENS name that I could just attest to for fun here?
I've got Paul2.eth.
Paul2, like this?
Exactly.
Nice. So it resolves, right? So even on base, we help kind of resolve it properly. Contributor, true. And then you can set an expiration time, right? So if you have like a subscription, you can allow it to automatically expire. And then every attestation, they get that specific attestation UID. But sometimes you want to like reference other attestations. So this was actually, this is a schema used by Optimism. So if you go into Optimism's like docs, they have a whole list of schemas that they're using for retro funding attestation. So project and organization identifiers, organizational metadata, project metadata, application statuses. And so if I just click on this one, you can see this was the retro funding application status. And if I dive into an attestation, I can see that the attestation was signed by this address, which is their address, attested to this data, but it's also referencing something. And so it's actually referencing a different attestation. So this application is referencing a project ID or a Farcaster ID. And this isn't referencing anything else. So you have a Farcaster ID and then the project metadata, but it's all kind of linked together in this like knowledge graph type system. So when you make an attestation, you can easily make references to other types of data. Now, where was I making that? I think I lost it. Oh, here it is. You can make them off-chain or on-chain, as I described before. Making off-chain attestations, you just get an object that's completely private, and it can be stored kind of wherever you want. And it's just like a JSON object. So just attest it to it, and then we'll see that the attestation gets registered. And it's just this address attested to Paul, that he's a contributor, true. And then I can revoke it. Let's just say Paul's malicious in some way, or just he's graduated from a contributor to something else. You can revoke it and reference this attestation as needed. But you can attest anything. So you can attest the data, you can attest the like statuses, you can attest the milestones, impact. Some notable teams right now, like DVouch, use it. A lot of the Giveth teams, projects use attestations. Gitcoin's a heavy user of it. Optimism's like Foundation, Coinbase, DVouch. I think I mentioned DVouch. Related to KarmaGAP. So many like cool retro funding teams, and like what we really want is like as this attestation data gets produced, it makes it really easy to like compose and build upon it. And so really encourage, like, if you're building a public good project or even related to some public good infrastructure, if you're producing data that you want other people to rely on, then instead of stuffing it into like Supabase or like some like off-chain database, or creating your own schema and like storing it in a contract in kind of like a very unique metadata way, if you can operate it with like a very simple like structure, right? If you structure it as an attestation, it makes you have the full flexibility to determine like what fields are important to you, but you still are communicating the data in the same way, so other people can immediately know like, okay, this data from this entity is just schema XYZ, and I can use it for impact measurement or whatever is important to you.
Nice. Great. Yeah, that was great, Bryce. I appreciate it. That was a very good walkthrough. Maybe for the sake of time, could you speed run through some maybe things EAS would like to see from maybe developer tooling? That would be helpful.
Sure. So right now, we're trying to like just make it super easy for people to make attestations, to go from this idea to make an attestation. But there's some other like edge cases we've been trying to solve for. So two things that we've released recently. One is if you're interested in ZK, we just launched a ZK playbook that allows you to create ZKPs from off-chain attestations. So if you get a signed attestation that's off-chain, you can generate a zero-knowledge proof from that signed data and allow others to verify it. And you could even have a verifier contract attest to the proof. So like the proof is generated, you attest to the proof, and then that way you don't have to like reproduce the ZKP every time you need to prove it to someone. You just generate the proof once, have a verifier contract attest to it, and then you just read the verifier contracts like attestation. So that's like a really cool, simple pattern, but we walk through, we spend a lot of time talking to builders on challenges of how do you go from like, what is ZK to begin with? So we even have like ZK and attestation, like 101 type detail. But read that if you're interested in it. Happy to help you explore ideas around ZK attestations. And then this is kind of like a hidden tool that we built. Hidden meaning like, I just wish it had more attention around it. But this was like a really cool project that we built. It's fully open source. It's for calculating transitive trust. So if you're building some sort of reputation system, especially for like impact measurement, and you want to understand like how much you should trust different people based off of like different attributes that they might have, we were really trying to think like, well, how do you actually calculate and propagate trust like in these types of decentralized systems? And the most common way is this tool called EigenTrust, or this paper called EigenTrust, not related to EigenLayer. It was used for like BitTorrent and to calculate seeding and leaching ratios. But we were looking at it and we realized like you could actually have malicious actors like civils like work together to kind of reduce the overall score and weights for people in these like reputation type graphs. So we had a guy on the team kind of review it, and he competes in math like competitions. He loves math, way over my head on the math side, but he reviewed the EigenTrust paper and was able to come up with a better way to actually implement EigenTrust for decentralized systems, and that's what transitive trust is. So it allows you to easily calculate how much I should trust. If I trust AFO and AFO trusts Paul, then I should trust Paul a little bit, but that doesn't mean that Nick has to trust Paul at all if we're not connected in our network. So it just allows you to, and you can use any edge as you can use any sort of data as like the signal. We think you could use attestations are great, but it could be any type of data, and it just allows you to quickly calculate it. So there's a I'll drop this in the chat.
Yeah, drop these links. Yeah, this would be great.
But check it out, and the SDK is available for anyone to use too.
This is awesome, and I think there's a whole trust Monty. I'm not sure if anybody on the call is working on like a whole trust graph, regen trust graph. So I wonder if they're using some of this for that. But yeah, this is great. Yeah, thanks, Bryce. It's like super great presentation. On the ZK part, I have to mention because I remember years ago that's like I was trying to like I remember we had a call with like Bravado, or now it's Bravado, but I think Polygon ID.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So now it's great to see some of those modules we built into EAS. Awesome.
Yeah, it's we're excited to see it happen. We just want to see like we're really trying to advocate for useful cases instead of just use cases for the industry. So like, how do we get teams building some cool things? And I think ZK is like underserved, and there's just a lot of cool stuff. So feel free to reach out to us. We're really helpful in any of the chats if you're building through something. Happy to help you think through schema design, implementations, anything like that.
Awesome. Yeah.
Very cool. Thanks, Grace.
Yeah, of course. Thanks, guys.
So next up, we got Aragon. The Alex from Aragon give a presentation on what they've been cooking up.
Hey, thanks for having me. Let me just see if I can get this opened up quickly. There we go. Cool. Well, firstly, quick introduction. I am Alex. I run ops from an Aragon perspective, and yeah, Paul, thanks for inviting us on. Really appreciate it. Obviously, so Aragon has been around since 2017, building essentially tools that allow organizations to exist on chain. Over the last couple of years, we've really been pushing forwards with a new protocol, OSx, which essentially the goal of OSx has been to allow a much more modular framework for organizations to govern themselves on chain. I'm not going to dive into like the deep like contracts, right, like at the contract level from an OSx perspective, but I've got a demo of an essentially an example of what OSx can power for an organization. So yeah, we've really been focusing over the past few years on moving into a much more modular framework. So DAOs that are built on the old tech stack, I think Lido would be obviously the biggest one, and Curve. And then on the new tech stack on OSx, we have projects like Tyco, Katana, Boundless, Stakehouse are all using Aragon in some regard to power a piece of their governance. What I will do is I will show you the app, the Aragon app. So essentially we have two different core components. We have OSx, which is the base layer smart contracts, and then we have Aragon app, which sits on top, which is the essentially no code application that allow organizations to build complex governance on chain without having to go through essentially launching their own smart contracts. So when we're looking at projects that want to build on top of Aragon, we have sort of two options. We have people can build a plugin on top of OSx and then build their own custom front end, and we have essentially a UI kit to help projects build their own front ends, or they can essentially work with us and we can work with projects on putting plugins into the Aragon app if those projects that want to use them, and open them up to all organizations. But let me give you a quick run through. So essentially OSx works at the base layer. It's a super simple set of smart contracts. So OSx at the base is essentially a simple contract that you then add plugins on top of, which can essentially manage different things. The simplest example would be either token voting as a plugin, or we have a multi-sig plugin. And then we have a plugin which allows those plugins to interact and do multi-body, multi-stage governance. So if I dive into essentially a DAO that we have, this is an example on testnet. Organization, obviously we know that organizations have different processes or different flows, and they want to add things like optimistic governance, they want to add things like time locks, but they don't want to be bouncing around to be able to do those. So essentially what we allow in the app is for projects to have different what we call bodies. So essentially you can create committees which are multi-sigs. You can create things, these are all just essentially multi-sigs here, or then you can have token holders, and then you can have supermajority, so you can set essentially a body that allows like supermajority to vote on upgrades. So for example, minting in this process, so each process is standalone. This one is a supermajority process, so essentially you need a supermajority to be able to upgrade or mint new tokens, so 66%. Then what we have if we were to say doing this project want to do protocol upgrade, so essentially upgrade the smart contracts, we have essentially the core team puts forward a proposal and a multi-sig. It then goes to community review, so this is token holders voting over 50%. And then, for example, this one is time lock. So essentially, the reason we put this in is if, say, an upgrade is going through that people disagree with, they have time to essentially exit a protocol. And then finally, we have, say, grants. Good example. We have you can add multiple bodies within one stage. So, for example, this would be distributing grants. So you could have a committee, and then you can have an external body like a SAFE as well. So you could have two different bodies that essentially are approving grants, for example. So that's just a few very quick examples of what you can do from a governance perspective. We then also have been helping projects now move into the more capital allocation. So we recently did capital distribution with Boundless. So essentially, we're now allowing projects to distribute capital. And we have a new plugin coming into the app as well, which is going to be VE again. So we're thinking about the full life cycle of a project. We don't want projects to have to move around. We want them to be able to essentially come to one place and be able to evolve without migrating and minimizing the risks as they sort of grow their organization. So maybe from launching a protocol with a multi-sig, moving all the way up into essentially doing decentralization and becoming a full DAO. But we understand that people can't launch often a DAO at the very beginning, and this allows them to progressively decentralize over time. We also have been pushing privacy as well. So we just did a partnership with Macy, and they launched essentially a private voting plugin on top of OSx. So this is one thing that we would love to look more into. So we've already done some work with Macy on this, but essentially, yeah, we would love if people have ideas on private voting. This would be like we would really like to push this forward as well. So we did essentially this would be an example of a plugin that's built on top of OSx, which then allows private voting. It's not in the app yet, but if someone wants to use it, I'm sure we could push forward. So that just gives you a very quick overview of essentially Aragon and where we're at from like a product perspective. Obviously, we have had a large number of DAOs, and we want to continue supporting DAOs. So we have essentially a full documentation suite that I can send out, which talks people through on how to build plugins on top of OSx, and then also list the plugins that we have already built. So the stage proposals, admin, multi-sig, and token voting. So those are sort of the five core ones at the moment. And then we also are going to have the governance marketplace where people can put their own plugins on top of. And then for anyone else, UI kit and the app template. Sorry, I don't know where I am or if there's any questions, but that should give you a very quick overview of where we're at from a product perspective. So obviously, yeah, we're looking at helping projects distribute capital. So whether that be grants or distributing to projects or token holders, or whether that be projects that want to do voting on upgrades and how they want to manage that voting, we can do much more customizable processes for projects now using the app or using OSx. So if people have ideas on what they want to build from a voting / capital allocation perspective, we'd love to work with people on that.
Nice. Yeah, I've noticed in at least a couple of the existing proposals already. I saw voting weight strategies and things that were proposed as a new governance platform. And it seems like there is a lot of space, especially with Aragon OSx, to instead of creating a new platform from scratch, taking a new strategy and or some new improvement to DAO decision making and plugging it into an existing platform that's has already done most of the legwork of governance outside of like a specific improvement that you might be working on. So yeah, I think
100%. And anyone who wants to do a new novel way of governing, we've also done some work on, for example, another plugin we built was a multi-sig which had 2 thresholds. So if it hit one threshold that was private, and if it hit another threshold that became public, for example. So a lower threshold voting if they wanted to push something through public towards token holders, and then a higher threshold if they wanted to keep something private. So we can do things like that as well. So we can do some super interesting governance plugins. If people have ideas with governance, but they don't want to build a full governance platform, yeah, weuld love to.
Very nice. Any questions?
These links in the chat.
Yeah, of course, I can. I'll ping them all in. And
Nice.
start speaking next.
Yeah, I'm gonna be diving in later today. That's awesome. Any questions from the chat? And also, yeah, feel free to just put it in the chat and Alex can respond there. But yeah, I really appreciate your time, Alex, and presenting.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Cool. So next up, we got Sam from DAOstar. We're gonna talk about OpenGrants.
Yeah, what's up, Alpha?
What up? What up? How you
And
doing?
Paul and everyone else. Yeah, good to be here. So I really wanted my technical lead, Rashmi, to be here, but she's on leave today. So you're gonna get me instead, but I'm gonna be presenting about OpenGrants, and I prepared, I think, my purpose here, because OpenGrants is, at least compared to these other projects that were just showcased, it's very new. And I want to provide like some context for you, as well as like what we're looking and hoping to build moving forward. So I prepared a little bit of a slideshow, nothing too serious. I'll leave it on this view because I have other screens I want to show you as well. But yeah, just beginning with OpenGrants, the overview. What we're really building here is an open source ecosystem-wide intelligence layer for Web3 grants and funding. And this is a way to aggregate funding information, enable tooling, reporting, and impact analyses that support better decisions and facilitate iterative experimentation that helps grow and improve our capital allocation practices in Web3. A brief just mention about DAOstar. So OpenGrants is a project by DAOstar. And also to briefly introduce myself, I'm Sam. I don't want to pull in AFO real quick, but I'm the ecosystem lead at DAOstar, focused on ensuring the long-term success of the DAO ecosystem by building public infrastructure and supporting collaborative research. I lead the growth and adoption of OpenGrants, working with grant program managers and builders to solve the challenges that we all experience during funding cycles. DAOstar, we build towards a future that sees DAOs becoming the standard for digital organizations. But to get there, we believe that standardization and interoperability are necessary to support a variety of use cases, which I think really aligns us with this round. So this started, we built something, we have DAO IPs or, these metadata standards that help structure the way that DAOs and other on-chain entities can publish and share information about themselves. There was DAO IP2, which was the first one that gained major adoption, which is a standard DAO URI, similar to a token URI in the ERC 721, and this helped enhance DAO discoverability, legibility, and interoperability. Next came DAO IP5, and so this is kind of what OpenGrants is built upon. This is an open metadata schema for Web3 grants. Over the past several years, we've really seen grant programs that are run by protocols, projects, and foundations really explode in size and popularity. And DAO IP5 was created to address many of the challenges that the Web3 funding ecosystem now faces, which include a lack of interoperability among tooling and programs, limited data availability, transparency issues, as well as program-specific problems such as grant farming and grant cycle inefficiencies. We believe that open, verifiable data can be Web3's competitive advantage here. However, current grant information is siloed, which limits, funding cycle efficiency, high context deliberation, platform interoperability, and sort of this collaborative learning that we need. So yeah, DAO IP5 here, it was built to support ecosystem-wide infrastructure that aggregates information about grant programs and grantees, enables tooling, reporting, and impact analyses that support better decisions, and facilitates iterative experimentation. It's basically an off-chain schema that structures grant data that are generated by funding rounds within Web3 grant programs. And this includes, various data components. The grant system, grant pool, projects and applications form kind of like these very low level data fields. And I'm just going to go over here, show you the specification of this is our GitHub repo here, and you have kind of like a good overview of both the motivation and specification of DAO IP5. I'm not going to spend so much time on here because I want to move forward to essentially the second aspect of DAO IP5, which is the data lake that we built and is hosted by OSL. Yes, I will definitely drop these links. I have many more links for you. Don't worry. They will all be dropped in the chat and maybe shared with you async after the call as well. So this data lake that we built with Open Source Observer, our friends at OSL, I'm going to head over to the repo here. Essentially the OSS funding repo. This is our data lake. If you navigate over here, you can see the DAO IP5 folder, which is all of the grant and funding round data that complies with the core specifications of DAO IP5. This is most important for the programs that want to translate and integrate their data with us. However, I think what would be a little bit more important for maybe this audience, so all the data is in JSON. You can navigate over here to where we have essentially the data that we've aggregated. So for instance, if you navigate to Arbitrum, you can see the STIP program and the data that has been structured according to the DAO IP5 schema. So this is where you would go if you want to, kind of explore the data that we have aggregated so far in this data lake. Sorry, just going to navigate back to the presentation. Yeah, so those are the two components of DAO IP5. Now, moving that forward to today, OpenGrants, we build on top of this open data infrastructure that is DAO IP5 and the data lake to build a couple of tooling or a couple of tools that we just recently released. One of this is a gateway API, which allows very seamless access to the data that's aggregated within the data lake, as well as a funding dashboard MVP, which I want to emphasize it's an MVP, but it's essentially a way that we want to display this data and promote transparency and accountability for the various funding rounds, as well as the projects that are receiving this funding. So switching the view, I can show real quickly the API page first, which is here. So this page, you'll see it's kind of got some like pretty, quick start information. There's three ways we integrate data into OpenGrants. The type 1 describes the API integration, which actually provides real-time funding data, and we're getting this so far from Octane and Giveth. Type 2, it ingests actually more static data types. So this would be like CSV or JSON, and the data liveness kind of depends upon that reporting frequency of those specific grant programs. So like this is Stellar, Optimism, Cello, those programs there. And then we also have an endpoint integration that we check on a periodic basis in QuestBook. That's our type 3 integration. I already mentioned our partnership with OSO, but we are also integrating project URI, or sorry, not URIs, but URIs from KarmaGAP to present kind of a consistent ID throughout the OpenGrants and Karma ecosystems. So that's the API. And then just really quickly, the funding dashboard, which this like really just kind of launched. We have this ecosystem overview of all the active systems, which are currently only 4 that we have in here, where you can see some like really quick ecosystem-wide funding data. Here we've got the different systems that are currently in here. You can navigate to the grant systems tab. It might take a second to load, so I apologize for any of this, technical difficulties. This is the first time I'm showing this off. But basically, this will has an index of all the grant systems that we currently have in here. I was hoping to show you, perfect. I want to show you the Stellar one. This is by far the most robust. I know it's not Ethereum, so maybe we keep this quiet from the GG round operators. But basically, you truly want OpenGrants to be across the entire Web3 ecosystem. It really is meant to be like a public, open, public good, open source database. And so here you have like, funding distributions by round, applications awarded, funds distributed. We're really working to iterate on the different kinds of data points and analytics that we can incorporate here. And I think most importantly, we have every single grant round of Stellar indexed here, and you can go into it to see every single project that has been funded, links to the websites, things like that. So, this is kind of our first attempt at building, something that really showcases the value of, building on top of this open data infrastructure that, used to be known as DAO IP5. I'm already over 10 minutes. I went through this. Yeah. I think I'm going to leave it there. I did want to just get to, this was my last slide anyway. It's kind of like a thought starter on what else we can build on top of this data. I'll let you kind of just peruse that, but I'll leave that there so I can answer questions before my time is actually up.
Well, I think actually, just read out this and because I think it's good to hear give some context to some of these, like so ecosystem mesh?
Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah, so what we're kind of hoping to build, or partner with people to help us build. First here is ecosystem benchmarks and frameworks. We really believe that holding. This process of standardization really helps facilitate ecosystem-wide accountability. And as part of this is like really growing into and learning, collaboratively learning about what frameworks really help us make the best decisions. So basing this upon actual grant round data and funding experience rather than just relying on heuristics or anecdotal data. We have analytics dashboards, which I kind of just led you through our MVP, really built for public display, transparency, accountability. If you want the metaphor, kind of building the L2 beat for capital allocation could be, something along those lines. We could build, actually portable grantee reputations. The data that we collect from grantees through both the application and subsequent reporting processes can be seamlessly shared across programs and platforms integrated with OpenGrants, which would create, more robust, more portable histories of grantee funding and performance. Just running through the rest of these automated application reviews, we can provide, red flags or filters based on, potentially high quality or high risk projects on previously collected and actually reported data. AI agent impact evaluations also once again trained on this kind of ecosystem-wide data. And lastly, this is kind of an interesting idea: curated funding registries that can be actually based on the funding and performance data that allows funders to kind of like sort through and filter more easily, as well as discover and then allocate capital to projects that they're aligned with and are actually driving real impact across the ecosystem. So yeah, I hope that kind of gives you a little bit better of an idea of like where we're hoping to head, the direction, the future of Web3 capital allocation.
Thanks, Sam. Great presentation. Appreciate it. Yeah, I think this is a great segue to the next presentation, which is Mahesh from KarmaGAP. I can see a lot of the tooling being built within KarmaGAP that's being described here. So yeah, Mahesh, if you're there, we'd love to pass it over to you.
Hello. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me here, guys. I'm excited for this. Quick intro. My name is Mahesh Murthy. I'm the founder of Karma. Sam briefly touched on KarmaGAP towards the end of his presentation. So that's us, KarmaGAP. We're excited to kind of partner with DAOstar more. So let me share my screen. Let me know if you guys can see my screen.
Yep.
Sweet. So we have built this product. It's an open source, it's a public goods project. It's called KarmaGAP. GAP stands for Grantee Accountability Protocol. So the core idea of the way this started out as you all know, hundreds of millions of dollars is given out in grants every year. Maybe it runs in billions now. One of the biggest challenges, there was no clear accountability. Here you're like giving out all this funding. Where is the money going? Like, did the projects deliver on what they promised? How do you track it? What was the impact it had on the ecosystem? There's no clear way to measure this impact. So there were all these problems. So we said, okay, like how can we solve this problem? So we built this on-chain protocol, which is actually built on top of EAS. Shout out to, I see Bryce here. We heavily leverage EAS. I'll go through how we use it, how we built the protocol and the product. But the core idea is for grantees. It's like a project resume. You create this project profile on chain as attestation, and then you share all your updates and all the grants you have received, the work you have done, everything on our platform. And for the admins and the community, you are funding these projects, so you get visibility into what is happening. So that's the core idea behind the product and the protocol. We have a number of communities who are actively using the our application today. So these are like some of the main applications. So we have this concept of communities. So Cello is a community, who are like region coordination is a community who are all like using our projects, our application. So to date, we have around 36 communities using, who have created about 4,000 projects. There are 4,000 projects like using our platform. About 6,000 grants are being tracked today, and they all have posted around 6,300 or 7,000 updates today. So the best way to look at see our product and what it does is, let's go to one of the communities. So here, for example, is a Cello community page, which shows all of the projects in their ecosystem. So they are tracking around 378 projects. So all of these projects, they go into our platform and they create their project profiles, and they start sharing updates and things. So you can see one of the beauty of this is we aggregate projects across various programs. So Cello runs this monthly proof of ship programs. So you can go into each of this proof of ship program and see what are all the projects which were there. They have created milestones. They've been posting updates on these. So, and there is another group within Cello who gives like growth grants. You can see that there's like another group which runs this proof of impact. All of them are like under one umbrella. Like there's one project for all of them. So for example, if you go to a project, say Sovereign Seas, here is their project profile. Like you can see every piece of this information is actually stored on chain. Tomorrow, if Karma just disappears, it's all there. It's still there. Someone can just spin up. The code is open source. Contracts are out there. It's open source. Everything is there. So someone can easily spin up and continue to use it. So you can go endorse like them on chain. You can see they have received these many grants and things. You can see all of their updates, all the milestones they are completing for each grant they have received. Everything is here. You can see in one place all of the funding they have received, all of the programs they have participated, all in one place. Look at all their, let's see if they have any milestones here. So you can see all the milestones, updates. Again, I just want to reemphasize, like every piece of this information is like on chain. So all of the work you're doing, it's like it's permanently recorded. So this is, we have, and then impact measurement. This is another cool thing is like, you can go look at all the their activities and metrics. Here is like their GitHub activity. We have their on-chain activity. We pull from Dune. We pull from Open Source Observer. So we have Etherscan integration. So you can pull like all of these things. And all the project has to do is just link their contracts and GitHub repositories, and we pull all of those and show. And from a community point of view, you can say like, okay, here's a community which has funded all these projects. And then you can see for each of that project, like program, you can filter by each program's impact, each project's impact, everything in this page. So this is the core of the product. This is useful for communities to keep tabs on all the funding they're giving out and what's the impact it's having. We even implemented this impact measurement framework called Common Impact Data Standard, which is getting a lot of traction in the traditional grants ecosystem in the philanthropic space. So we kind of implemented that where you can say, okay, we funded this. Now, what are all the activities? Like, what did they do with the money? And what is the outcome of those, right? So you as an admin can go and configure these things. This is my outcome. This is my activities, the things I want to like track. So yeah, and then we are now expanding beyond just beyond impact measurement and accountability into the whole full stack funding platform. So Optimism is the first one which started using our platform. They can actually, they go configure these applications, so they can like configure this form. There's AI evaluation. So as you're filling out an application, you will get AI will evaluate and give you feedback to improve your application. So here's an example of an application, right? So you can see one of the Optimism grants. This was the application they filled out. This is the feedback it gave. This is the guidance it gives. We work with each ecosystem and building this comprehensive prompt, and then we iterate on this. So I just pulled up the stats before this call. The AI evaluation in the Optimism ecosystem, it's been used like 700 times in the last 1 month. So a lot of applications are coming. They're all like actually filling in the application, hitting evaluate, getting feedback, improving their application, which saves tons of time for application evaluators. So we even went and looked at last 1 month's data. It has saved them so much time. Like a lot of the ones which has like a score of like 2 or 3, you don't even have to spend too much time. You can just know like, okay, this is like, they're not going to get like, you can kind of like within few minutes just evaluate and just reject them. As I said, like, yeah, we are now a full stack funding platform. But the core of this is like accountability and the milestone tracking and the visibility. I know that's a lot of things, but I would love to answer any questions.
Yeah, I love it, Mahesh. Thanks for presenting. And I think as a follow-up for like the round would be helpful is understanding how builders could potentially build upon KarmaGAP. What are some pain points Karma has from a tooling perspective and things they'd like to see built? And maybe we could just share anything there.
The one thing I wanted to just bring up was we have now aggregated a lot of this data, a lot of these things. The next thing we want to build is like build more AI agents. In fact, I took a first stab at it. Graven is here. He knows they work with Good Dollar. So Good Dollar runs this program. So I'm one of the evaluator or voter. So I have like certain votes, and there's like this bunch of projects I have to evaluate. So I built this agent which takes their demo, takes the videos, watches that video, like transcript, looks at their Karma updates, puts all of those things and kind of scores them and like, okay, this is how much you should allocate to each of these things. Like it was like a pretty good first stab. So I want to like dog food this and then kind of open it up to everyone, right? Like anyone who funds, like they should be able to use these AI agents. So that's coming.
Nice. Okay. I love that. And I recently integrated with Karma and it's on a project that I'm working on called Green Goods, which is a simple PWA to capture biodiversity and environmental action. And yeah, it was, of course, and any content development is tedious, but it was a lot easier just knowing that like, okay, it's using attestations. I understand that we built onto attestations as well. So it's a common language that we could share. And yeah, so that's the thing. Yeah. Another beauty. Yeah.
I mean, honestly, like a big shout out to Bryce and the whole EAS team, because like we're able to move fast. Like we can do a lot of these things just because it's like such a simple protocols. Like EAS attestations are like just amazing. So
yeah, I appreciate you hopping on and presenting.
Thanks for having me again.
Awesome. Well, okay, we got about 20 minutes left. We got one more presentation. Graven just hopped into the chat just recently, so want to pass over to him, and I think he's going to talk about some Superfluid and some of the primitives he's been working with. Oh, look! Oh, okay, already.
Slide right in. Is this good? Yeah. Yeah, so I'm here to talk about Superfluid and specifically programmable money streams and try to really populate this idea of what Superfluid is and what it could do for us as public goods builders. So I'm Graven. I work at Flow State, not Superfluid, but we build a lot of stuff with Superfluid. We built streaming quadratic funding, which is kind of a open-ended, continuous version of the allocation mechanism we all know and love. We've been building with Superfluid before then, but that kind of inspired us to kind of go deeper into the allocation space, specifically with Superfluid. We've done some voting things, we call them flow councils, and then a more general purpose tool that we call flow splitters, that we're interested more and more in creating kind of more like markets rather than voting mechanisms. But yeah, so today I guess I want to introduce some concepts from the Superfluid protocol, and hopefully you can understand them at a deeper conceptual level so that you can utilize some creativity and build on top of them. And I'm happy to support after questions, follow-ups, anything like that technical. So why I'm here, and I mentioned I don't work at Superfluid, but I might as well because I'm probably the biggest bull poster out there for Superfluid, is because I believe Superfluid is Web3's first non-skeuomorphic money. And I think it gives us the ability to program money in better ways to achieve what we want. And that's what I'm here for. I think a lot of us are like, yeah, implicitly, explicitly, we just want to make the world better. And and we need tools to do that. I think Superfluid is an awesome tool for that. And what I mean by that statement about skeuomorphic money is, I'll say that ERC20s and how you transfer money is closer to gold coins than it is what Superfluid is. And what I mean by that is that we used to have gold or precious metals, right? The invention of money, you would have some in your pocket or your purse or whatever, and there was this transactional nature. I would give you 5 units of whatever. And those units can be as small or as big as we want, cut them in half, whatever. But it's this idea of discrete transfer. I take it from my possession and give it to you. When we started making digital forms of money, basically we were able to do that much faster and over longer distances and maybe keep track of units better. But it was the same sort of mechanism where like I had a balance, I would take an action and send it to you. We took that same stuff and we applied it in Ethereum world and smart contracts, ERC20s. Yes, we improved it. We removed middlemen. We made it trustless, faster. We can put if statements around all these transfers, but ultimately, like a ERC20 transfer is a discrete change to a balance, and it happens with like active input. And it doesn't have to be like that with programmable money. And that's really what Superfluid showed. You can have a balance that isn't static. And the subtlety here is that when you have a moving balance like this with Superfluid, it's not transactional. It's not like I'm sending off firing off a whole bunch of micro transactions to update this balance. And how Superfluid did that is with this extension of the ERC20 standard and what they call a super token. You have a balance, you have a number, but they introduced this idea, and this is programmable money at its finest. You can have a function that can resolve to a number, but is a function rather than a discrete number. And if you insert variables like time that just march on whether we like it or not, then you can actually have passive money movement. It doesn't take a transaction to move money. And so ultimately Superfluid is basically in these super tokens, it's a more complex accounting system than ERC20s. You're basically you're balancing stream openings and stream receipts rather than like debit, credit, left and right side of the ledger. And basically what this ended up doing, this accounting system, is allows you to interrogate each account atomically, and you can understand whether they have more coming in or more going out, and what its impact is on a second by second basis on a balance. And this is where this really differs from, say, like a Sablier or a DRIPS protocol. With Superfluid, once you have the super token, you're not depositing tokens and then withdrawing them. They're hitting your balance continuously, passively. And so, yeah, that's super tokens, right? This idea that you can have this number plus a function as the definition of your money. The second component I want to talk about with Superfluid is their agreements. So what are those functions, right? Like, I've just introduced it at this abstract level. Basically, the Superfluid agreements library lists the current in protocol ways that you can introduce functions to a super token balance. They're of course on chain, they're open-ended typically and perpetual, and they're built into that balance. So when you are creating a Superfluid agreement, you're basically updating that function in a super token balance. Right now, there are 2 primary agreement classes. There's the constant flow agreement, which is kind of one-to-one money stream. And then there's a general distribution agreement, aka a GDA. That's what it's called in contracts. And it's this concept of a distribution pool. So the constant flow agreements define flow rates in way per second, and the money is moved from sender to receiver. So it ends up looking like, instead of a transfer function, you have 3 different types of kind of updates to the agreements. You can create a flow, you can update a flow, and you can delete a flow. And all of those are about manipulating that flow rate per second between a sender and a receiver. General distribution agreements, that's that pool concept. You can have both one-to-many streaming and or instant distributions. And this is like, I think, one of the coolest things on chain. We use a lot for Superfluid. But to explain how it actually works, how the magic works, I laid out a few here. Say this is a GDA pool. I've assigned 200 units to different recipients, 80, 50, and 70, 200 units total. And let's say I start a stream to this distribution pool of 20 tokens a second. We're going to proportionally divide that up based off of the number of units. So the flow rate is determined by 80 divided by 200 times 20 equals 8. And so that's how distribution pools work. And keeping those variables separate allows you to do some really cool things. So say we want to add someone to a distribution pool. We're going to add 100 units. We give this fourth recipient all 100 of those. We're going to see that now in our distribution pool, all of a sudden we have 300 units. And we're going to update the flow rate atomically at that same time based off that unit update. So recipient number 1 now has 80 out of 300 units times 20 tokens a second comes out to 5.33 tokens a second. So with one transaction, you can update the flow rate to an infinite list of recipients. And so super powerful, really cool thing that you can do there. But you can also, on the other side of the equation, you can also update a flow rate. So now that we have 4 recipients, we had that ugly number, where it's 5.33. If we want to bring it back to round numbers, we can increase the flow rate from 20 a second to 30 a second. Now we're going to have recipient number 1, 80 divided by 300 times 30 equals 8 tokens a second. So on both sides of this, you can increase, or I guess you can manipulate people's flow rates by changing the number of units, including adding different recipients, or you can open up and multiple people can open streams to this distribution pool and increase this flow rate. So again, that's I think a super powerful primitive. We've used it for streaming QF, flow councils, and everything basically that we've done. The last kind of component that I wanted to touch on is this concept of super apps in the protocol. They're akin to like Uniswap v4 hooks. Basically, when you take an action to update a stream, open a stream, close a stream, you can use super apps to call external logic and do really cool things. Again, we use this in SQF. Basically, how SQF works is when someone opens a stream to a donor, that's through a super app, we trigger a atomic update to the quadratic formula calculation and insert that into a GDA. And that's how when someone opens a stream in SQF, you not only are receiving a new direct donation stream, but you also get an update to the quadratic matching at that same time. So I've said this a couple times. I'll keep saying it. I think this stuff is really, really cool. And it nerd sniped me, but the reason you should do this isn't just because it's cool. Even though, yeah, maybe have some fun doing it. But I genuinely think we can build better incentive systems, markets. We can organize ourselves better by using streams. It's new tooling. You can't do this anywhere but Web3. So let's take advantage of it. And really that's what we need in public goods. If you've been around a while, you know that like, just because we have like good values doesn't mean that we're going to win. Like we're in an open market. We might not charge prices for our goods, but we need to figure out some way to be sustainable. And I think streams are like a great tool for that and would encourage you all to explore this with your integrations. You can gain some capital efficiency, being more pluralistic. Instead of yes, no votes, you can turn dials and embrace a like kind of spectrum of funding outcomes. And I harped on earlier, like what is money? It was always very transactional. I think of Superfluids as relational, right? When I open a stream, there's a connection between two people or two accounts. And I think that ends up creating a different sort of dynamic between funder and receiver. You can start small, you can build trust, there's ongoing sort of engagement there. And in our funding systems, we should embrace that. And then finally, I think just streams are always forward looking. Right, it's more like a SaaS business model than packaged software. When you get a one-time grant, it's like selling a CD with some software on it. You're like kind of wash your hands of it, right? With a SaaS business model, there's an engagement, ongoing expectation of investment to keep that business. And so I think just in general, streams trigger something different in both funder and recipient's mind about what they're funding and what the expectation is going forward. Here's some just simple resources. I'll drop these in the chat, but start at the docs, of course. There's also some tools and apps and some SDKs and stuff for LLM coding and all sorts of stuff that you can get started with. But I would really just encourage you to get started with something simple. If you have a token in your community or you're going to be using tokens, you can explore using super tokens instead. And then maybe grow from there into some of the more advanced mechanisms that Superfluid offers. If you need any help, hit me up. Twitter, Farcaster more these days, and glad to jam on any ideas that you all have, and hopefully see more streaming money out there. Because I ultimately, I think there's a lot of great network effects that can happen with adopting these tools.
Awesome, Graven. Thank you for that. Thanks for the presentation. Super in depth. And I guess maybe just one quick question: is there anything in particular, like tooling wise, or like that is a pain point on the Superfluid side that they would like to see built? Anything that pops up?
Yeah, I think it's all about kind of the composability of the money. So it's more adoption focused rather than tooling. It's utilizing these tools in more places. Superfluid doesn't have the support of, say, an ERC20, right? Like not every so it's really about exposing that and getting more eyes on these tools and using them more often is the key here.
Okay, nice. All right. Well, we got.
I do have one.
Okay. Go ahead.
If there's any accounting nerds out there, when money is moving all the time, you need better tooling around keeping track of that for organizations, for individuals, for tax purposes, for accounting purposes.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good shot. Awesome. Thanks, Graven. And Sean, Sean, I got a question. Go for it, Sean.
Thanks so much, guys. This is awesome. Just on the Superfluid, I've been aware of it for a while, but I haven't looked under the hood and checked out how it works yet. But let's say you're putting 1 ETH into a smart contract. Is it a protocol where the full ETH gets sent there, or does Superfluid take a cut out of that for using the service? Or the last question was do you define how long it takes? Let's say it's 24 hours, for example. Can you talk just a little bit about the mechanics of how it works?
Yep. So Superfluid is an open and free protocol. It's a public good itself. It's just basically it's a token standard and all that infrastructure around it. So it's free to use. Which slide do I want to show? So the main difference between Sablier and Drips are other streaming protocols that are out there, and their model is you have 1 ETH, you deposit it into this external contract that takes your ERC20, and then basically all the accounting rules are encapsulated in that smart contract. And that's why Sablier can do interesting different vesting steps, and you can build in all sorts of math. Superfluid takes that same concept but embeds it in the token itself. So when you are using ETH, say you want to stream ETH, you're actually streaming ETHX. It's a wrapped version of ETH. So think of it like wrap ETH allows you to do ERC20 things instead of native ETH. Wrapping ETH with Superfluid gives you those Superfluid capabilities. So ultimately, you're never depositing it once you have the super token. And then when you open a stream, it is by default always open-ended, and it's basically linear. So if you say you have 1 ETH and you want to stream it out over 1 month, you would say, I want to stream 1 ETH a month, and it would do so. You would need to close it at the end, or there's basically the accounting system for Superfluid automatically closes streams when you hit 0 to keep the protocol solvent. Thanks.
All right, man. Thanks. I can 100% see myself using something like this in the future. Thanks so much.
Awesome. Yeah. Hit me up if you have any other questions. That was a good one. And it is something that to grok the difference in what it means to take that sort of accounting system and put it into a token, and the implications of that takes a while. So that's why I've been bull posting for the last 3 years or whatever it has been.
Awesome. Well, okay, let's see. Oh, we got Jim. Okay, Jim, come up, yeah.
Yeah, I guess my question is, you said it's like a wrapped version of the token. So if I sent it to a contract, it wouldn't be identified as an original token any longer. Is that correct?
Yeah, basically it's ERC20 compatible. So when you take ETH and wrap it to ETHX, if you go to your wallet, most most modern wallets now recognize and will show you ETHX as your balance automatically. So it'll still show up in your wallet, but it is basically a transformation of that coin into something else. It's a new balance. You can always one-to-one withdraw it out, and that's where people kind of think of that as deposit and withdrawal, but you're depositing and withdrawing to a protocol rather than a specific smart contract. And you can use that balance for all sorts of things. I will mention that, so obviously most coins out there are ERC20, so you need to wrap them to do it. There are Superfluid native. You can launch it. If you're going to launch your own token, you can launch what's called a pure super token, which basically like there's no unwrapping or wrapping. It just already has that stuff basically like at deployment. And so that is really great for UX and helps kind of clear up some of the confusion about like what is a super token balance.
Thank you. And I guess just to clarify for my own uses here, I generally want to stream to liquidity to reward communities and holders. So I would have to create a Superfluid version of this token and then create the liquidity pools so the contracts would appropriately identify it and then use that token to stream.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. I just wanted to make sure I understood it.
And yeah, we're at 2 hours. So really appreciate. Oh, Bryce, all the questions coming in all towards the end. Yeah, go for it, Bryce.
Hey, Grevin. Awesome. I love Superfluid. I think I was like blown away when I first saw something streaming money. I wanted to like show all my friends. Just like, look, this money's like coming in right away. But one question I have is like, I'd love to hear like, have you seen any adoption like for traditional like payroll type systems, or like what type of pushback we generally see from people? Because like there's a lot of businesses around getting paid 2 days early, you know, obviously getting streamed, even like a vesting schedule for like equities, like in private companies and stuff is like a huge use case. But I'm just curious, like what you've seen on the frontier from traditional businesses thinking about this type of streaming money.
It works currently. Like there's been more adoption when you're paying contractors, at least in the US, right? Like the running payroll is not as straightforward as you might think. They have payroll engines and all that shit, like for different tax withholding and all that sort of stuff. But like as an organization, like we get paid by like, I guess, benefactors, customers in streams, and that gets split out to our team. So I get paid by the second, and it's awesome. And it like makes our admin very easy. It's good for me because I get paid by the second. And so it's like slowly building that sort of stuff up. I think the resistance or the challenges remaining are just conceptually understanding what's happening with this stream versus kind of like people assume it's like a bunch of microtransactions, and really understanding this. So it's like an educational thing. And then what I mentioned, like there is just a resistance to like crypto taxes are already pretty hard, and like people don't like doing them. And then all of a sudden you introduce this concept of like, well, I'm getting paid per second. So like, what's my cost basis? Well, like, and I know this because I've been doing like my own taxes and company taxes for a long time for like with streams. Basically, we're making it up. Like there is no thing in the US tax code that says how to handle that. Like it's so far beyond anything that they've comprehended that you have to make educated guesses. And Superfluid does have tools around that, but I think we can improve them. I'll just give a shout out, like the team at Splits that has done teams and like compliant payments and all that sort of stuff. They're doing amazing work to make it easier for organizations to adopt on-chain payments, and that like making sure it's regulatory compliant, because we still have a lot of BS to deal with there. And then just like removing reasons for people to say no to use it, so that you can embrace like the really positive new things with the tech.
I say I'd love to see more adoption of it. I think it's super cool. It definitely will play a big role in the future. So it just needs more use cases using it.
Yeah, we're trying. So come join us. Anyone who wants to. Yeah, lots of fun stuff going on.
I know we're at some people will have to drop, have to pass the 2 hour mark. And we were supposed to also have some space for builders, but don't worry, builders. We're gonna have weekly builder office hours for the next few weeks. So there'll still be a lot of space to share what you're working on, the proposals. But one proposal I did want to get some space to share. And we'll do that in just a couple minutes, but got a couple Slido questions just to close the call. And then we'll go into that last presentation from Jimmo and Sylvie. But yeah, I appreciate everybody staying on so far. Been a great call. So we go back to the Slido. The next question up is, what layer do you feel is most underserved currently in our space? I'll share a link once again. I just want to go from the chat. So we'll just go ahead and just give that a quick answer. I think you could rank them, I believe. Cool. Capital formation seems to be up there. Yeah, I think we got a lot of allocation tools. I think we're good on allocation, right? Superfluid. Identity and reputation. Okay. Governance and coordination, number 2. We can get a few more in there. Get a more diverse mix. We got 10 submissions so far. See, we still got around 26 people on the call, so if we get up to like 15 people, that'd be great. Go ahead and open that link or get on the QR code. Cool. I don't know if any of the presentations today, we had any of the capital formation tooling that we have featured. Like, I know Upton Vaults is about to be more formally launched in a couple of weeks. Or I don't know, David, is there any actual update you could share on that?
Yeah, I didn't include that in my prezo, but yeah, so Flow State, we're working with Octant to introduce streaming, but yeah, they're obviously focused on capital formation. They actually have a hackathon going on right now on DevFolio to build integrations to vaults, new DeFi primitives, integrations, yield strategies. So yeah, this is number 1. And Octant is trying to solve that problem by using DeFi and using yield to support all this allocation and coordination and things that we want to do. So I will try to quick pull up a link, drop that in there, and lots of good stuff going into DevConnect with Octant around vaults.
Yeah, and just to give a sense, in our tooling list for capital formation, we have Django. It's building Juicebox and RevNets.
Yeah, Django is going to present today, but had something come up, so he wasn't able to join.
Well, given how long, probably yeah, but it's all good. We'll definitely do. I'm down to do another one of these. Honestly, I think this is pretty fun. So we got Juicebox, Giveth, RevNets, Oval, and Octavaults that we have here. And cool, looks like we have a good enough submissions on the Slido there. So the last question is, just giving off, what's been presented, or something that you already came into this call really excited about. Yeah, what interoperability tool or collaboration, potential. Maybe it could be from even the tools that presented. Maybe you saw another tool present, you're like, oh, I'd love to integrate, etc. Jimo, would love for you to present that in the builder space. Maybe, or do you want to go? You want to go for a minute or two right now?
Hey guys, I'm literally on the way to a place, so hopefully you can hear me okay.
Yeah.
I would love to kind of do a deeper dive in the builder space, but the really short version is that for those of you who aren't familiar with Sylvie, we're building a reforestation stack, and historically that stack has been configured in the back end, and so projects can receive bounties for planting trees and storing them. What we're really excited to do with the SDK application is finally do 2 things. One is leverage a lot of the tools presented today. So EAS, mostly as a canonical registry of these projects, things like configuring funding schemes and strategies. We're using Allocate, which I didn't hear a lot about today, but I'd be curious to kind of think about that as well in the public good space. And then KarmaGAP to report and push metrics into, and then finally HyperSearch as almost like a tokenization or financialization of that. So would love to kind of go through this in more of a deeper dive. The main idea here is to inquire how others could use this SDK by Sylvie, with ideas already being formed around folks wanting to launch NFTs for adopt a tree programs that could then build on top of the Sylvie primitive, but be hosted in third-party websites and things like that. So maybe I can expand on that a little bit next time. I know we're running late today, but thanks for having me. Cheers. And thanks to all the presenters today.
Yeah, look forward to a more deeper dive. All right, so Paul, you there? So, buddy.
Yeah, sorry, I had to get in my car and drive somewhere, so I went off camera. But yeah, those were really awesome presentations. I can also give the 30-second Juicebox and RevNet's pitch, since I've worked a lot with that team. So Juicebox is a fundraising platform, kind of like a tokenized GoFundMe, and it's kind of famous for, originally it did Constitution DAO. And so it's a very basic framework for raising money and then issuing tokens with parameters for token issuance rates and price increases and whatnot. RevNets is the exact same smart contracts in a different front end. And really the main difference is that the stages are locked. So when you create the RevNet, you're essentially creating a Juicebox campaign where all the terms are locked in perpetuity. And the idea behind that is to create the strongest possible revenue receiver for an organization that people would be able to invest in. So it's branded more towards like companies and people who are would treat it kind of like a fee receiver for their project, as opposed to a public goods fundraise that has distributed governance of the treasury. And yeah, so that's a newer release, and I think it's only been kind of out in the real world for a few months. But yeah, two very interesting capital formation tools. But yeah, I think I'm sorry that we went over time, but it was kind of worth it seeing all these really cool projects, and everyone that we saw present had, I think, a really, it's like critical infrastructure is the best way to put it. This is all stuff that if you want to build stuff that works, you need to be thinking about how to solve the problems that these tools are solving. And yeah, I think in terms of how that relates to proposals that we're hoping to see in the round, because obviously it would be great to see proposals that are directly addressing the issues with that infrastructure. So we would encourage proposals from people at those teams to where they can get funding to address some problem that a lot of their users are having. But then also projects outside of those who want to make their platforms and tools better, and the way to do that is to integrate those tools. That's another great connection to those projects. And then also a completely separate concept that's addressing some problem in a new way that no one has thought of before. That's also encouraged. So there's really not like a limitation. That the key part is the case that is being made for why we are suffering, like what's some reason that all of us in this space are suffering, and how is the thing that you're building going to make us all less miserable at funding public goods and growing this infrastructure, so that it's not just an insular thing that we're just doing for ourselves, and it's actually good enough to expand into more traditional public goods, like things that nonprofits and governments are doing, and people that like our friends and families are spending their money doing on a day-to-day basis. How do we make their lives better? So yeah, it's very open-ended, but I think you can get some ideas going through the Charmverse and through what you've heard with all the presentations today. And we have our open Telegram chat, which is a really good place to kind of workshop and just kind of chat around with the other people that are building in the space. Yeah, that's also the best place to ask questions ongoing, since I know the other things are going to pop up in the coming days.
Yeah, and yeah, well said, Paul. Yeah, definitely, I appreciate everybody staying on longer. Definitely, I think talking through these tools is just, it's kind of hard. Yeah, it takes time to explain these are critical infrastructure and tools that you want to understand well, so you can know how you can build upon them. So just want to close with this question. Yeah, this last slide over here around the what interoperability tool collaboration are you most excited about going forward? Now having gone through this call, so let's go ahead, drop dots. We'll close with that. Appreciate everybody, staying for as long as you did. We still stayed pretty strong. We're still over 20 people, so really great for everybody. And super shout out, biggest thanks to the presenters for taking the time, being patient when things were running behind schedule to still stay on and present. Really appreciate you guys, and looking forward to continuing to build collaborations, keep working together, continue to grow interoperability between our tools. And yeah, I'm really bullish on this space. And yeah, thank you everyone, and have a good rest of your day. We'll talk soon. See you. Thanks.